And verse 20, so when we have the children up there underneath the talit and we do the blessing, the traditional blessing, we're actually following a commandment of Torah. As it says here, so by you shall Israel invoke blessing, saying, God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And so that's the blessing that we do over the children. It's the long traditional blessing. It obviously focuses on this idea that Jacob reached down and took them and promoted them up, adopted them as sons. He adopted his grandchildren as sons. I guess a notion of that, we talked about this before, right? When Jacob fled and he was going back to Haran to find himself a wife, and he fell in love, right, with her right there. And in his mind, he wanted to marry her and he wanted to have children. So in his mind, Joseph should have been the firstborn. In his heart, Joseph should have been his firstborn son, but he wasn't. So what he's done here by adopting Ephraim and Manasseh up and assured that they will each get a portion of land in Israel, that means that Joseph, the father of these two, has now received the double portion of a firstborn son. And it even says right here that he says, they shall be no less than, where was it? I'm sorry. No less than Reuben and Simeon. So we're going to see in Jacob's declarations about his children, we're going to see that Reuben and Simeon get a pretty harsh demotion. So that's the firstborn. So this is a very subtle way of Joseph making his family descendants the way he wanted it.
In the Psalms, it's
go ahead.
In the Psalms, it says that Ephraim is my helmet and Judah is my
scepter. Yeah, there's a lot of Ephraim in here.
In 48:6, I hadn't seen that before, but he says, your offspring you shall bring forth after them
Are yours. Yeah.
We don't hear of him having any more offspring.
No, but he does.
And he loses his status as a tribe, because you never hear of the tribe of Yosef after.
No, you do. Joseph is mentioned very often.
But I mean,
in the prophets and all that. Yeah, no, Joseph maintains his position.
I'm looking at Yeshua now in his offspring, us, his body. And he has a place, but it's carried forth in this earth through his descendants.
It's adoption, and that's exactly what Paul is talking about. You've been adopted, and so this is the pattern upon which that is. Yeshua.
Paul speaks about it regarding even the Roman emperors. They adopt people that are not even in their line, lineage, as Caesar. And so,
well, one of the most notables of that among the Romans is our historian that we go to, Josephus. He's Josephus Flavius. He was adopted into the Roman Caesar's family, which is why he's looked on as a significant traitor among the Jewish people. But we have to, unfortunately, rely on him for so much history because he did document so much. But so I think you're on the right track. It's just a little bit cloudy because Yeshua, of course, being the greatest son of the tribe of Judah, but he, as Paul notes, he adopts us all into the family. And that's the parallel concept to the grafting in that Paul speaks of. So I always make a point of that in my prayers, that we are all grafted in and regrafted into the tree of Israel. And this is Jacob doing his own pruning and grafting of his tree before he leaves. Pretty remarkable, though, when we look at that.
If you read the Septuagint, it names Joseph's other 5 sons.
Oh, in the Septuagint version. Do you know what citation that is? Thank you.
No, I don't. Not right offhand, I don't.
I'll have to look that one up.
That's where you see when Stephen gives his oration before his martyrdom, he says there's 75.
70, right.
And the scriptures here, and in the Masoretic text says there's 70.
Count the 70 plus Joseph's 5 that he had in there. You know, and there's also,
That's what he read from.
there's an apocryphal text. It's not canon, so don't worry, I'm not citing it as anything like that. But it's a remarkable text from the Second Temple period, and it's called the Testimony of the 12 Patriarchs. And each one of these gets a chapter in it, and Joseph's in particular is remarkably messianic. It's so much so that, again, talking about scholarship, the scholars go back and say, this had to have been written later by Christians, Christian Gentiles. But there's some evidence to show that there may have been modifications to it, but it doesn't stand to reason that Gentile Christians who had already split off and had already cast aside Judaism would want to go back and then insert these into it. So it's a remarkable document from the Second Temple period that has apocalyptic visions in it, and it has it's called the Testimony of the 12 Patriarchs, and it each one of them addresses their own life, and often starting off by declaring, "Look, my children, these are the mistakes that I made. Don't make these mistakes." And they mesh pretty well with the blessings, if you will call them blessings, that Jacob's about to give to his sons. Anyway, absolutely remarkable event in the history of Israel is this adoption moving up. So I've just talked a lot. Somebody pick up wherever we were before that, and note that you see these are not exactly blessings. They're prophetic predictions of the course of the descendants of these sons. And indeed, many of them, so Simeon and Levi did in fact end up dispersed among all the other tribes. However, look at Levi. This is his anger, his zeal ended up working in favor, because as we get into Numbers, we're going to find that the descendant Pinchas, who in his zeal killed an Israelite who was with Cosby and all that sort of thing. They were integrating themselves into the pagan lewd culture around, and his zeal stopped it. And so because of that, then he's granted the priesthood and an eternal covenant of peace. And indeed scattered among the tribes, because the Levi will get no land holding. Simeon will get a land holding, but it's like a little postage stamp in the midst of Judah. And so they do become just dispersed in amongst Judah. So many of these things have actually come true. And you can see his disgrace at Reuben and what the event that he refers to that Reuben did. Now let's continue with Judah, and this is the big juicy part right here, verse 10. That's and obviously this too came true, because the first, I'll put it as a question. From what tribe did the first king of Israel come? Benjamin. That's right. Saul is from Benjamin. But that doesn't go well, right? So it's yanked out. And then the next king is David from the tribe of Judah, and he's promised an eternal kingship. And so the Davidic dynasty now becomes the only one from which a valid king of Israel is to come. So this too comes to shape. But it also, I liked the translation where, what did it say? The teacher of the law, is that what it said? In verse 10. Scepter shall not depart, nor the lawgiver. Okay. This says ruler's staff, typically, is how it is. They're interpreting that to mean lawgiver. It's not a bad interpretation. So the tribute shall come to him, and the homage of his people is his. And then, of course, we shift into verse 11, and now we're beginning to see perhaps the first echo of the prophecy from Zechariah that talks about the donkey's foal. And we saw the fulfillment of that in Yeshua coming in to Jerusalem riding the donkey, and there's even a mention in there when he tells his disciples to go find it. You'll find a donkey, the foal of a donkey, tethered, literally. So these are all, this is poetic Hebraic text. It has a specific meaning at the time, what you would call a Parashot, a straight meaning, but it also obviously has many things between the lines and underneath it. Washing his robe in the blood of grapes, his eyes are darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. Teeth whiter than milk, of course, is a vision of purity. And the imagery then of washing his garment in wine, the blood of grapes. So we obviously can see and hear a remnants, a hint of what we call communion, right? Where by his blood we are washed clean, and we remember that by drinking the blood of grapes, which we will do today. So much depth in this. Okay, let's continue with Zebulun.
Hold on, I'm sorry. In one translation I have it as white as snow.
White as snow.
Yeah.
I would say that the word there is definitely milk under the Masoretic text.
Verse 11 also, I'm thinking of when Yeshua comes back, starting out the judgment of the nations.
Yeah, the picture of the garments soaked in blood. Zebulun, who's next? You're fine. I'm going to go ahead and interrupt and say, probably Zebulun was sitting there and he went, whew. His is the first straightforward one. It's pretty easy, Yeah. This in fact becomes true. The land of Zebulun ends up having a nice seashore and a port, and it's immediately adjacent to Tyre and Sidon. Pretty straightforward. He just got a nice real estate grant, that's all. He got a land grant, and he gets to be a haven for ships. And he probably breathed a very big sigh of relief. Because by now, everybody's got to be sitting there going, geez, Dad.
And we're really not that fit boy.
Yeah. Okay, someone pick up Issachar.
Issachar is a strong donkey.
Sitting there thinking, I got beach.
Hiding in the back.
The strong-boned ass. Let's be, again, contextually, you have to look on this. You may not know this about donkeys, mules also. They're fierce. They are absolutely fierce. And they're smart as can be. And if you are a shepherd and you have a donkey with you, that's better than a sheepdog, because they will protect, and they have the ability to protect. They know exactly what their job is, and they will They will have no fear of running headlong into a lion or into a bear. I have seen mules that are used by lion hunters. You know, they're just a typical lion hunter in America has a pack of hounds. They release them and they pursue the lion and tree it, and then the hunter gets there and they shoot it. Well, mules are not a big fan of lions, and it was all mislabeled, but a bunch of series of photos floated around on the internet a number of years ago showing this mule that finally, when that lion was available, the mule went at it. And I mean, he picked it up by the back of the neck and was slinging it around, throwing it in the air and kicking it. And, you know, I mean, they are fierce. They're absolutely fierce. So this is actually, you know, I wouldn't be overly happy if my dad on his deathbed had said, "Son, you're a strong-boned ass." But in their culture, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big compliment. Is talking about him being a consummate shepherd, and bent his shoulder to the burden and becoming a toiling serf or something like that. He's talking about Issachar being a really hard worker. You have to try to recontextualize and see this through different eyes. Let's look at Dan now. So again, Dan, the word in Hebrew means justice or judge. So judgment. So he's saying here, he's depicting a very sharp judge. Doesn't mean that he's like a highwayman sitting out by the side of the road waiting to, you know, steal things. What he's talking more about is really pure justice. So that this picture of biting the horse's heels so that its rider is thrown backward is really a picture of justice conquering haughtiness. So
It's very mystical. I mean, it's kind of a messianic thing. I've read some rabbis that messianic rabbis
interpret it as a picture of the judgment day, the judgment of Messiah. It's pure, and this, to me, the picture that just keeps coming up is if you had a horse and you rode in those days, you had a great advantage. You were probably very wealthy, and so this is really a picture of justice sticking up for the little guy, if you will.
And we see it where it says, "In your salvation I await," that's justice.
That's the next one. Yeah, Yeshua Techa. I cut you off too soon, whoever was reading that. I apologize. So that's where the rabbis are getting this being a messianic passage. All right, so now let's do Gad. So for Gad, it's just, my sense is he's talking about him being on the border, and border towns have to get used to invasions and having to go back and get their stuff back. So largely that. We're looking at more of we're often here, what I'm trying to focus on is the Parashot, the straight meaning of these words first. There are many more underneath them, but let's continue with, we can just go with the rest. Real quick and we'll see. So here again, these are idiomatic phrases, and that interpretation that you read, Joseph is a fruitful bow by a spring. Its branches run over the wall, but more directly the words are Joseph is a wild ass by a spring, wild colts on a hillside. And again, you have to look at these. This is referring to a species of equid that's found in Syria and all that country. They're colored very similar to our American antelope, and again, they're really they're not easily tamed. They're not easily domesticated. They're very wild and powerful. So not sure which interpretation to give to this poetically. But then you go on and look, archers bitterly assail him. They shot at him and harried him, yet his bow stayed taut. His arms were made firm by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. So you can see how this would that would more parallel this idea of the wild ass. I'm having trouble remembering the name of it. I don't want to misspeak. Again, it's standing firm in the truth, standing firm in what he's going to do. By the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, there, the shepherd, the rock of Israel. We're getting a lot of other imagery come in. The God of your fathers who helps you, and Shaddai who blesses you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that couches below, blessings of the breast and the womb, blessings of your father, surpass the blessings of my ancestor to the utmost bounds of the eternal hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the elect of his brothers. So you can see here's the literary equivalent of the multicolored jacket. Jacob is pouring it on his favorite son here. And he has very good reason to. Look at what's just transpired. He's the leader of the free world. He's saved his whole family. He's provided for them. It says that Jacob's neshama was uplifted when he saw him, right? And so, but this is obviously very messianic in here. This is predicting what shall rest on the head of Messiah. Now we know, of course, that Messiah, has to come from the tribe of Judah, but we don't need to get so lost in our Western mindsets here when we're talking about poetic imagery that we have to look at the overall picture of these. The overall picture of these is talking about Israel as a people and talking about them as a messianic people and talking about the Messiah himself. So we may find elements of Messiah scattered throughout the words spoken for the tribes. And here in Joseph, we see this exultant picture of what could really only be actually a divine entity if you really burrow down into these words. And so we see this picture of Messiah as with divine, what shall I say? A divine calling, a divine mission. And that mission ultimately is redemption.
In Benjamin there, I think we see King Saul.
Yeah.
But also, I think we can see Shaul, Paul, in that he starts out as the ravenous foe, and in the evening divides. After his new day, he brings in the spoil. So yeah, because Shaul, as William is pointing out, Shaul comes from the tribe of Benjamin. So Apostle Paul from the tribe of Benjamin. So I guess the overall picture that I'd just like to say is, wow, take a look at this and try to recognize that you're reading poetry. So it's not going to be direct statements. It's not I can go to this book and say, aha, see here? It says so right here, therefore this. A poet's job is to grab you by the heart, not by the head. So you almost have to kind of feel these words a little more.
The whole book of Parashot is that way. Creation is
The
clear. Elohim makes it, but it's not clear in the details.
Right. Well, all 5 books are a poem. Now, again, we have to be cautious because of our Western mindset. We have an idea of what a poem is, and this is a different kind of poem although the two overlap quite a bit. But even the cantillation marks, so on the Hebrew text, it's a consonantal language. It was passed down orally. Everybody knew how to speak it, but then by about 900 AD, they realized we're scattered all over the world. We no longer have Jerusalem as our center. We're starting to lose the ability to pronounce and to properly read the Torah. So a tremendous group of men, the Masoretes, got together and they put in these extra symbols, vowels, so that you will know what the vowel sounds are. But then beyond that, they put in the cantillation marks, which give you the ability to sing it. But even those are more than just musical notes. They're actually punctuation also. So the Masoretes were incredibly important. We may not have, Judaism never numbered chapters or verses, but it did maintain a close hand on what was a verse and what were the separations of words. You may not even realize it, but even the space, when you write words, the space between between two words is punctuation. And if you've ever been around someone who flows their words together when they speak and you have to stop them, you understand why. So even spacing is that. So the portions get set apart. So when you see how the text is on the page, the spaces are as important as the marks, and it's an incredibly complex picture, and so it's meant. Really, what's the whole goal of us having a Bible at our fingertips? Well, it's to be able to have our hearts, what I always pray about, transform our hearts. These words are supposed to grab hold of our hearts. We have to process them through here, and because we're Western thinkers, we tend to stop here. And we tend to spend too much time trying to detail that, but we've got to listen to the words. Let them. And now I'm talking over the words. We haven't even finished this thing, so.
On that note, I've been trying to learn to speak modern day Hebrew,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the teachers, when they rattle off, it's like I have to put it in a slower mode because I can't distinguish.
You can't distinguish the sounds.
The end of one word to the next,
Yeah.
the sounds that they're making.
Yeah. It's always the hardest thing. Talk to her, perhaps the biggest challenge was her to learn English, yes?
Okay,
I mean, that as far as linguists that I understand, that's the hardest transition is to go from Chinese or one of the Asian languages and try to learn English. So our... So let's continue with this, though, and we'll read a little faster now, because there's some other cool stuff we need to talk about here. 28. That even in this book, now we have two pictures of Jacob dying. One, he said something, and then he bowed his head, and then another one, he says all this stuff, and he pulls his feet in. He didn't die twice. It's that God wants us to understand some of the most important things about his last days. Let's continue. An awful lot here I'd like to touch on. Chazak, chazak, v'nish chazek. We finished a book of the Torah, so we say that.
Be strong, and may we be strengthened.
Should now it didn't occur in my translation, but what was the mourning period for Jacob in your translations?
40 days.
70.
70, yeah.
Someone say 70? Yours says 70. That's accurate. So, this whole thing about the death of Jacob, the wording used, the imagery used in here elevates him to the level of a pharaoh. The mourning period for a pharaoh was 70 days. There was the embalming, which took 40, and then an additional 30 days with that. And there's some other interesting things here. We compare 49, where Jacob says to Joseph, I'm about to be gathered to my kin. Bury me with my fathers in the cave which is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave which is in the field of Machpelah in the land of Canaan, the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite, the burial site. And then we have Joseph going to Pharaoh saying, my father made me swear, saying, I'm about to die. Be sure to bury me in the grave which I made ready for myself, or which I hewn for myself, some of the translations, in the land of Canaan. Well, we know Joseph didn't hew it. It was a cave. I love this picture of Joseph. This is Joseph translating. This is Joseph between two cultures. He knows the truth about what it was, the cave of Machpelah that was bought. It was a cave. There's no detail in our Torah which would say that Jacob ever did any modifications to it or hewed it out or anything like that. He could have, but it's certainly not provided for us. So what does Joseph do? He goes to Pharaoh and he says, please allow him to be buried in the grave that he hewed for himself. Well, what do pharaohs do? From the time they become pharaoh, their biggest spending project is to make their tomb, their pyramid, their entire reign. They spend every bit of tax dollars they can to ensure that they will have this future in the afterlife and this massive thing. So Joseph is translating in a way that Pharaoh would understand. If he went up to him and said, hey, my dad said he wants me to stick him in a cave in the ground back there, and Pharaoh would be like, that's disgusting. I wouldn't want to do that. So he's brought this into, he's culturally translated to Pharaoh. But in so doing, the Torah brings us to this place where we come to understand, wait a minute, this is now Pharaoh honoring Jacob as though a Pharaoh.
It's interesting because because Jacob, when he met Pharaoh, he blessed him, and the greater always blesses the lesser.
The lesser. And so we have the very interesting relationship between Pharaoh and Jacob. And at least equals. It's a very cordial interaction between them. But I think, again, carrying on our big picture that we've been looking at, that this is a pesher of the bigger picture of the redemption of mankind. This is again saying that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the greatest God, and that even Jacob then rises above Pharaoh. He rises above all of the kings of the earth, because what's going to happen in the end, right? All the nations of the earth that survive will come year by year to Jerusalem, to the place of the kingship of Israel. And I think that's exactly what's being depicted for us here. This is, again, a picture looking at the future. This is a redemptive picture. And then they go and look at what happens. He gets sent with, chariots were maintained. I'm not sure if there were any around, 400 years later, but, chariots, which 400 years from now will be chasing Israelites, are now, in this case, are escorting the patriarch back to his burial place. And this is the Egyptians going and pouring out. We talked about this before. Look at the love they're showing for Joseph and his family because of what Joseph and his family did for Egypt. So they're pouring this out. And then here's another thing I'd like to explain, where it says Goren ha'atad, the threshing floor of Atad, and it says, which is on the other side of the Jordan. Again, we Western thinkers, right? We go in there and we scratch our heads. We're like, well, Egypt's over here. And the other side of the Jordan, that's over here. So did they go and cross and then come back? No. You got to remember, how do we have this book? How do we even know about this stuff? Because God told it to Moses. Where? Mount Sinai. He's sharing this. This is Moses speaking this to the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. And so when he says, and they came to the threshing floor of Atad, it's over there across the Jordan. It's just a side note. It's over there across the Jordan. He's pointing to the promised land. It's not pointing away from the promised land. It's pointing to the promised land. And while we can't definitively say that the threshing floor of Atad is the same as the threshing floor of Arunah, which David will buy, which will become the place of the temple, it sure leads one to be suspicious. If there's this place called Atad and it's a threshing floor and everybody has stopped at this place and they're mourning and the Canaanites are looking around and going, oh my gosh, these are the Egyptians. It would be the equivalent of Washington, D.C. getting a military parade and everything and taking someone down into Mexico and having a military parade in Mexico and stopping for a while and mourning in like Mexico City. All the Mexicans would be going, holy cow, this is America coming here to do this. This is an earth-shaking kind of international sort of event here. Canaanites would be terrified that the Egyptian army is coming into Canaan, and they would be on scramble, red alert. Everybody grab your swords and your spears because the Egyptians are coming. The Egyptians are coming. Or maybe someone was saying the Yiddish are coming. The Yiddish are coming. But and here they are mourning.
This is no big, small feat.
No, this is.
To be buried back in the land.
It was a small enough feat. It could have been accomplished with a couple of wagons. But look at what Egypt does. They go all out. This is a huge international event for the sake, again, of burying the patriarch, of burying Jacob in the promised land. And, it would be very bad hermeneutic to say that the threshing floor of Atad is Jerusalem, but boy, it seems suspicious that it could very well be.
It's one of the reasons why the Egyptians.
It certainly reminds you of
son, but but Jacob is more than Jacob. He's more than Israel. He's this iconic person, and this very portion that he lived. And I mean, the wording is he lived great. I mean, those 17 years, the numerology is so good.
Right.
That despite being in Mitzrayim, it's constraining and slavery.
That's literally what it means. The wall's closing in. That's
he
what.
lived great. And it's for us to consider that in our lives. We live here in this broken world, and it's not always going pleasant for us, but God wants us to take.
He lived to the fullest. And what did he say? I will be with you where you go. Don't worry about going into Egypt. I will be with you. All right.
And I just verse 4, I was wondering,
Verse 4 of what?
chapter 50, the imagery of Yosef spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if I found favor in the eyes,
Right.
speak to the hearing of Pharaoh. And then I think of when he revealed himself to his brethren, the weeping and everything murmured back to Pharaoh. Pharaoh definitely still is keeping his from the Ivrit, his distance. Yeah. That's
Right. Well, yeah, remember from from the shepherds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, even with all that, he still bestows upon these great honors. So I guess, this picture of there's identities that remain true. The Egyptians never become Israelites, and the Israelites never become Egyptians. Even the most flagrant version of that is Joseph, but he maintains himself. He maintains his identity, so that, again, I laugh about him translating between cultures. He hewed this out. This is his pyramid. Can we go bury him in his pyramid in Canaan? Anyway, beautiful picture, an overall picture of the future redemption of mankind. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. We thank you, Lord, for this beautiful book that you have left behind. And I pray, Lord, that we've had some clarity today on certain difficult details that are left behind in it. Help us, Lord, to love these words, to open our hearts instead of just our minds. Open our hearts to receive these words, Lord. I pray that they will be transformational words that will cause us to walk differently. And we thank you, Lord, that you are with us wherever we go. And I pray this all, B'Shem Yeshua. Amen.